I remember, y'all, it wasn't too long ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, the right's number one issue that they told us they were all about was free speech. They would not shut the fuck up about free speech and the First Amendment. This is what you heard 24/7. And usually their examples of how out of whack everything has gotten is, oh my God, look, you had Milo Yiannopoulos was protested when he tried to give a speech at some college, or Ann Coulter was deplatformed, or Ben Shapiro was deplatformed. And they tried to build a movement around this anti-social justice warrior approach to politics. In other words, these young college lefties with pink and blue hair and a septum ring, they're the problem in our society. They're so authoritarian and they don't want to hear any dissenting opinions. This was the whole ethos of the online right. This was what the intellectual dark web was about. The Eric Weinsteins and the Sam Harrises and the Joe Rogans. Like, they would not shut the fuck up about this. And also, as you all know, they love to have conversations about having conversations. Nobody sucks themselves off more for having conversations than these people. They talk about talking about stuff instead of just talking about the stuff. It's, let's have a conversation about having conversations, and we like to agree and disagree, and we like to talk in this highfalutin way where we say nothing, but it sounds like we're saying things, even though we're very clearly saying nothing. Yes. That's what that whole world was. Well, guess what? It did not take very long at all for this notion of the right as the bastion of free speech, for that to be blown up in everybody's faces, right? First of all, during the George Floyd protests and riots, in, I forget the exact number, but it was 20, 30 plus Republican states, they passed these anti-protest laws. You even had, like in Florida, for example, DeSantis signed a bill that like flipped the burden of proof. If a protester got run over by a car, they would act like, oh, well, maybe homie had it coming. Like, that was the idea behind it. You also had these anti-BDS laws on the books, which basically means if you boycott Israel, you're going to get $0 in government contracts or government support or zero access to the social safety net. Basically, it made it illegal to criticize Israel at punishment of losing any sort of government support at any level. That's the idea of the anti-BDS laws. So that was already the case. And then we also have, as you all know, Donald Trump has a really long record of despising free speech, despising the First Amendment and the Constitution. I mean, he literally called to terminate all rules, regulations, and articles in the Constitution over his election loss. The idea was, put me back in there. Fuck the Constitution. I should be back in there. This is what he said openly. He threatened to de-license news outlets that criticize him. He wants to punish flag burning with a year in jail, which is deeply unconstitutional and against the First Amendment. He sued CNN for $475 million for calling his election denialism the big lie. Before he was president, he sued Bill Maher for $5 million over a joke. So you should be understanding now the reality that the right don't actually give a shit about free speech. They use it strategically. They use it strategically to go after the left, but they're hypocrites. They don't hold themselves to the same standard. And there's 1,000 examples of it right there. Now, I did not foresee just how brazen they would get with their love of authoritarianism on certain issues, right? So here's Ted Cruz. He went to America Fest. Now, by the way, this America Fest thing, this TPUSA Charlie Kirk event, this is like MAGA Central, right? Cenk Uygur was at this event, and Charlie Kirk asked Cenk Uygur, what about the left's hatred of freedom of speech? How do we get the left to be for freedom of speech again? And then Cenk gave some answer about how we need freedom of speech for the people who are marginalized the most in society. That's why we have to defend freedom of speech. Trans people need freedom of speech. Muslims need freedom of speech. Racial minorities need freedom of speech. That's sort of the answer he gave. And I was pulling my hair out specifically because if you're asked about free speech at a TPUSA event, you cannot let Charlie Kirk get away with pretending like the right is in favor of free speech when they are 1,000,000% against it, as evidenced by the things I already mentioned in this video, right? Well, anyway, here's Ted Cruz at the same event. Look at how excited he is to brag about destroying the First Amendment completely. And of course, take note, what issue he wants to destroy it over. Here we go.
We will enforce the law, especially against universities across this country. The anti-Semitic protests we've seen at universities will end next year. If you violently protest, if you threaten your fellow students, you will be arrested, you will be expelled, and if you're a foreigner, you will be deported. And we're going to see the Department of Justice and the FBI follow the money, go after the money, cut off the money. We're going to see universities that tolerate anti-Semitism having their federal funds cut off. And when your fellow students look around and say, hey, why didn't this happen before? Why did everyone look the other way at the violence and the threats and the hatred and the bigotry? You're going to be in a position to tell them.
So here's what he really means by that. If you have protests on college campuses that are against the genocide, that are critical of Israel, that say things like free Palestine and from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, they are going to define that as violent threats. They're going to define that as anti-Semitism, and they're going to do whatever they can, expel students, suspend students, have the university crack down on it, have the police crack down on it. If you're a foreigner, deport you, cut off the money to these universities, their money that they need to these universities because they allowed free speech and allowed protest against Israel. This is what he's saying. He's saying in order to protect Israel, we will ban free speech. You are legally allowed on U.S. campuses to protest the United States of America. You can go out there and scream about the Iraq War, for example, and say how evil and wrong and terrible that is. You can go out there and protest some economic policy from the Trump administration. You can go out there and say whatever about our country, our government. But if you go out there and you say free Palestine, you go out there and you chant about how Netanyahu is doing a genocide and the IDF are doing a genocide, they will declare it violent hate speech. They will declare it anti-Semitism, and they will take away your free speech rights, take away your First Amendment rights, destroy the Constitution in the process, and it's all to serve AIPAC and the Israel lobby. This is Ted Cruz telling the Israel lobby, I'm still with you, and send me another check for my next election. I'm so with you, I will destroy the U.S. Constitution to protect you and to get another check from you. Remember, Ted Cruz sued to get more money in politics. Remember that? He had a case go all the way to the Supreme Court, and he won, by the way, about getting more money in politics. That's how corrupt he is. He did a court case to allow more corruption. And here he is, and this is the logical endpoint of everything he did. The logical endpoint is fuck the Constitution, fuck the First Amendment, fuck free speech. We love Israel. Any even mild critique of Israel, we're going to define as violence, we're going to define as hate speech, we're going to define as anti-Semitism. And by the way, on top of being authoritarian, this is also right-wing wokeness, isn't it? Because I thought you should be allowed to say whatever you want to say about whoever. You should be allowed to say mean things about black people and Hispanic people and immigrants and women. But, oh, would you look at that? The second the target is Israel, all of a sudden, that's not allowed. Now we got to cut off your money. Now we got to deport you. Now we got to crack down on the protest. Now we got to arrest you. What else is there to say? What else is there to say about this? This guy is shameful. He's shameful, to say the least. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.